Mm. Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Oh God, really?
Goodness sake. Yes. The things we do. And is it working? Yeah.
Hey, Hugo.
More.
How are ya?
Hi everyone.
Hello, Hugo.
Sarah.
Long time ago.
Hello.
Yeah.
And hello, dear people.
Oh, Daryl's here. Staying up late, Daryl.
Come on, show your face, Daryl. How do your eyes look like now?
How do your eyes look?
Hi.
Daryl, this isn't it's the one next week that I was talking about, but I don't know if you were here to see Arne, and this is just Arne and Pedro.
Hello, how have you been?
Oh man.
Hello, Daryl. It looks like.
How do your eyes?
Have you been drinking some schnapps? You look like
No,
a
I'm
chap with a big
I'm a
smile
thing.
and your eyes are closed.
I'm staying awake by eating fried vegetables.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's how you stay awake. That's good.
And
Hi,
Ryan
Arne.
Hackenberg, he's showing us his
Hey.
wall of post-it notes in his caveman of design thinking.
Hi, Yan Yan.
Hey, Daryl. Very good to see you here.
I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah. I can't
Emil
believe
too.
there's people actually coming.
Everyone, actually.
Emil
that I
too. Yeah. And you know, Arne, Emil is really excited about this one.
Mhm.
Oh, why?
Why? Tell him, Emil.
Why?
Because you can't do that.
Exactly. Perfect
Bad
answer.
idea.
Well, I'm excited because I love chaos,
Here you are. Welcome.
and that's putting us all in an improvising mode, and well, just pretend you have a plan. So we get there in the end. I know Arne can do it, and I'm just waiting anxiously for him to show it. Thank you very
Yeah,
much
me
in
too. Me
advance
too.
for having me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I know at least we haven't prepared, so that's good. Well, we haven't prepared together. Let me put it that way, because it's interesting how
How we manage
how the idea of chaos and not preparing kind of literally affects your brain and the team obviously, but also the people who are supposed to create that chaos. It's really interesting. We'll talk about that in a minute, what that does to you, at least to me.
I want to say hello to Jorin. I am sure he's the youngest one for today. Jorin, you're so welcome. Brave of you to come and join us. And I hope you like it. It's one of
Thank you.
It's going to be one of the most extreme sessions, I do hope, for us.
Okay, I'm very curious what to expect. So thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Yin Yan?
No.
Yes,
Oh.
Emil. Is Emil speaking? Young lives matter.
Okay, on a card. You want it on a card, I think, huh?
Yes, please, on a t-shirt.
Or can I ask you to sing the hip hop lyric, please? Hugo, sing what you wrote. Please.
No. No, I'm here in.
Do that.
Yeah, I can. I can do that. No, because I'm in a coffee shop. So if I start hip hopping, I can't do that and dancing.
You can't do that.
Yeah. Yes, I can, but I won't, because tomorrow and the next days I want to be here, and people allow me here to stay here and work. So Please
I
give
think
me a
it's
break.
still you can't do that.
No, I can. I promise. If you want, I don't know. In about a month, we can do a web jam about
Yes.
hip hop and design thinking. If you want.
Yes. Okay. So you won't do it, which is still
No,
I can't do it.
I will. I will.
That's it. That's for next week then. It is the I won't do that. It's all right. Okay, so I think we're going to start because there's actually people, which is awesome. So thank you so much for joining us here and being part of this. I was interested in doing a session without preparation, and actually just because I wanted to see what would happen. And one of the things that happened is that although we are a small team and all we do in the web jam is based on failing forward, so trying new things, and we do kind of get into a structure of things. So and I think Pedro and I, we kind of like chaos, and we like sort of being things to be unstructured, not so much because that's all we want, because but we want to create a balance. But it's interesting. What happened is that even though our small little team we got so many, because we didn't prepare, and we have this whole process, a very new process to prepare these web jams, and we said no to everything. And we got many questions like, do you really not want to have like a test run or like dry run? Because we do that. Do we have like, some information for the invitation? I said no. But there was, in the end, somehow the information was there, because all of a sudden it had a little subtitle and it got like a little text. I was like, who wrote that text? I think Pedro did. I think you did. I was like, who wrote the text? I didn't want to have any text. No invitation. It had to be vague. But it's really difficult to keep things vague. And also inside of your head. I noticed that if even though you don't, so if you want to create chaos, and in this case, because we care dearly for the community and we care dearly for the web jam, your brain will start to kind of try to kind of help you and save you from disaster. So, and I don't know how your experience was, Pedro, but my brain goes like, all right, no, I don't want to prepare anything. I just want to dive into this. And then my brain goes like, yeah. So how can we turn that into a concept? Like, nope, don't do the concept. I came up with like 20 concepts throughout the last 2 weeks of all kinds of stuff that we could do to kind of turn it into a concept.
So let me actually put some more detail into this story, because I think the backgrounds of this story are quite interesting. We were suffering a lot in the early days organizing these web jams. They're difficult to organize, and when you're starting, it's really hard. You don't know exactly how to run such a show online. The first show that we tried was a bit difficult. 2.5 hours workshop. We didn't really understand how to run let's say, the speed of events online and how to prepare for that. So it was a huge learning opportunity. And then everything was very difficult. We tried to kind of like rehearse everything, be prepared, learn from it. And I think it's just like when you're learning how to play the guitar, well, the first months are really painful. You struggle to get some decent sounds out of the damn instrument. And then you feel a bit more comfortable. And then you set into a set of kind of stable exercises, you feel comfortable, you start to play the same tunes, and that's what happened with us. Although this is very much an experimental event, we try to make this a learning experience. We started ourselves to fall into the trap of repeating the same formats over and over again. And so we felt this need to say, we need to break the mold. We need to see what should we do in a different format. At the same time, we had some of the team members very fairly saying we need more order because there's more people around us. There's a whole bunch of people trying to help us with all the social media, etc. And they need information, they need things in order, so we need a process. So we started having some processes in place, and suddenly processes bring rigidity. And then when you have rigidity, you really struggle to say, so we wanted to do something very experimental, to do things in a very different way. And suddenly we're being really kind of like squeezed by the process somehow. And so we kind of broke apart from that. And this is a very common tension in organizations, which is you think you need order, and you do, to run operational business. But also, if you don't experiment, if you don't create the space for chaos, you never learn, you don't progress, and you lose the essence that made the company start. And so we don't want to lose the essence of what made WebJam start. And this is what we're doing now here. Arne,
Yeah,
you
tell
have
me.
20 concepts in your head. Let's start with one of those.
Yeah, so actually, because the idea wasn't in my mind, we weren't going to talk about chaos or the benefits of chaos at all. That was sort of added to it later to sort of save the session. They're like, I was like, no, it's not going to be chaos. And then again, that's the interesting situation that became chaos, which is great. Okay, so I wanted to share, so because the title of You Can't Do That, I really would like to talk about moments in life that you either tell yourself or you've been told by others, or maybe you tell other people, you cannot do that. And because I think it's relevant in a number of ways. First of all, it's about your personal growth, because you go through life, and many times in life, you will tell yourself like, I can't do that, or you question yourself. It's about insecurity. That insecurity kind of, starts living its own life basically in your personality when you start working and when you start becoming a colleague. But it's the same for everyone. So it is also about leadership. So how do I create a safe space for others? So I don't have to tell them you can't do that. But when do you actually? Because I have kids and I have a teenage daughter, I kind of tell her quite often, like, no, you can't do that. Should I just let her go? What are the limitations? So I created a couple of concepts in my mind, and this morning I created a totally new one. But I did kind of share with Pedro that I was going to do a little storytelling game.
Yeah.
And I have another idea, but that might mess up the thing too much. So I will stick to the sort of the non-plan that was turned into a plan, which is the storytelling. Now we're going to test a few things today, which we would love to have your feedback on. One is, as you can tell, I'm using on one of the screens, which says Happy Stories. I'm using the new plugin called It's a plugin for Zoom, but also for, I think you can use it for WebEx and for everything that uses your camera. So which allows you to kind of share your slides in a very different way, which I think is awesome, because it means you don't disappear behind your screen, and you can even share video, but also add a different camera and have like a little game with so suppose you use a tool as a facilitator, you want to show some information and you can show it live there. I think that, so look at that. That's one thing. The other thing that's just basically we're testing. The other thing is multiple cameras. So you can actually use multiple cameras, which I haven't tried. I mean, I tried it out. I haven't tried it out functionally. So I'm going to see whether I can make it functional. So I'm going to share some stories, and I hope they're going to be stories I want to share, because if you see here on this screen with all the Post-its, there are some titles of stories that some of them, like the yellow ones I like sharing, those are okay. The green ones I actually don't want to talk about. So, but I have dice. So I'm going to throw dice and I'm going to share the story that actually comes up. And I know there's a few stories I actually don't want to share. But anyway, I will share, because they're all related to things that that I told myself I couldn't do, or someone else told themselves they couldn't do, and I was anyway upset about that. So that's the other thing. So it's the format. So it's maybe also I hope the story is also interesting that I will share, because it is about all of them are quite life-changing moments or pivotal moments or reflections that have impacted my life. But it's also the sort of the format of interactive storytelling. So that might be a game you can play when you're facilitating or when you're working with colleagues or with your team. You can use these multiple screens in different ways. So just look at it also on that level, like all the things you can do nowadays with technology and multiple devices. So that's sort of the one thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to share some stories, which I'm actually kind of nervous about. All right, so that's what I will be doing. And I have an exercise that is probably uncomfortable for everyone. I'm going to do it anyway because I've done it before a couple of times. So people who have been at the Design Thinking conference last year, they actually fell victim to my little game at that time. So if you've been there, you know the game. Anyway, I'll shut up. So what's your plan, Pedro?
Oh, my plan is to let you now launch the first story. Yeah. Roll the dice. Okay. If the result of those 2 dice is 1, we cancel the whole session.
Yeah, that's one of the things I realized. There's no way you can roll 1. So if I do with 2 dice. All right, please. All right.
Is that?
All right. Oh, really?
Oh, crap.
Oh, God. No, that's okay. That's a good story. Actually, that's not bad. All right. Okay. So, God, my father. Jesus. I didn't think I was going to do that one. This is where technology goes. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, good. Okay.
Sure.
So my father is it's an interesting story. Like you said, it isn't one of the hardest stories, but there's a few things that that really impacted my life. And my father's, I don't know, he's someone, I got so totally irritated with him many times in my life, simply because I think I look a lot like him. But I remember one of the moments I remember clearly, which is very much related to this. You can't do this. He was 40 years old, and he wanted to have a job, another job, and he was too old at that time. So he was working as a scientist, and he wanted to kind of move up or do something else. And they told him, you're 40 years old. So when you're 40 years old, you really can't have another job. Anyway, so that's one anecdote. I remember that as a moment, like for me, and I'm now 53 years old, which is something that I find really difficult to cope with. But this moment where he said, he wanted, and he never tried. He really never tried. He never really, in my mind, it's like, is that you're just gonna, and then when he was 63, they retired him because he was working as a civil servant for a university. And when he was 63, he went to early retirement. But he didn't want to go in early retirement, but he had to go in early retirement. So he did. And he never tried to do something else. He wanted to, but he didn't try. And I don't know, that had such a big impact on me, because I've always said to myself, like, if someone tells you, you can't do things when you're at an older age, or, if you want to do, don't let people tell you what to do. So that's my, I think that's the anecdote I wanted to share about my father, which kind of has had impact on me, but also as a person. So anyway, so that's it. Did you hear me? Pedro, over to you again.
I need 10 more seconds. Keep saying something.
You need 10 more seconds for something? Yeah. Well, all right. Well, there's another thing that if you, the way you're brought up, so one of the things my father did when I wanted to do cycling, so like competitive cycling, And he didn't allow me to have one of those raising stairs. You know what that means? So, and I remember being so angry about that, that I created one myself. So I basically created a steering wheel like that myself, and I just put it on my bike secretly. So.
I launched this poll about changing jobs, which is one of those chaotic moments in life, and sometimes it's difficult to change what is happening in your job, and so you decide to change to a different job, and that is actually a recommendation I sometimes give in a workshop when I give a presentation about change management in design, and at some point. Companies resist for all sorts of reasons, because someone will say, we've been doing this for the past 30 years and it has been working well for us, or someone will try to fight because it's not their objectives, or sometimes there's no strategy. And in the end, I usually say, if even if your administration has no clue to which direction to go in terms of change, and it has been happening like that for 2 or 3 years, change job. That's my final recommendation on that presentation. And so if you have changed job, what happened? And so did you resist changing a job? Did your family resist it? And we'd like to actually, I can see some results from the poll. Some people are saying that their own brain resisted, some saying that their family resisted, and others are posting on the comments. I would like now to actually open the microphone and ask people, when you try to launch chaos into your own life by changing job in a difficult position, a difficult moment, what happened? Who would like to share their own story now?
I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. When COVID hit, my whole world changed. I was a traveling consultant teaching communications. Yeah. But before COVID, I had been wanting to go on my own and do something completely different and just couldn't get over the fear. Too big a cliff. What happens? I could clearly die immediately. Bad things could happen. So my own brain was in resistance. Yeah. Then once COVID hit, it became clear that this was a really good time to make the leap. And so I did. I left the firm that I was contracting with and went out on my own and focused on diversity. And the first thing that my family said is, you are far too white to run a conversation on diversity. And so that became one of those places that had a real opportunity to stop and hit glass. And I didn't, but it was a bit to overcome, and yeah. I did, and it's working out, but it took a lot of counter messaging into my head to balance that. And I heard that in Arne's story too, right? There's that counter messaging from what you saw, especially from someone you love. Yeah. So yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Could let me see if I can ask Monica Ugalde to join us on the microphone. Monica, are you willing to also share a bit about your story?
Hello. Yes. But I had an episode in my career where I lost a job, and thinking back about it, it was really about the politics of the organization, and just some weird, unfortunate circumstances around that. It was not really to do with competence, but it felt like competence to me. And I then struggled a lot to kind of take the next step, and it was really me getting in my own way. So. If anyone has had that experience, I mean, if you need a shoulder, then please reach out. So I know how hard it is, but please don't get in your own way, because it's probably the worst thing that you can do.
Oh, absolutely. That's wonderful advice. Thank you so much, Monica, for sharing that. We are our own major obstacle for change, because we feel comfortable with our habits. We're an animal. Can I also ask Saskia if you could also share your story with the audience? Is that okay? This is turning into kind of a radio show for a moment, but
it's turning into a therapy session.
Yeah.
Yeah, last year I moved to San Francisco to start my new career as a full-time tenure track faculty I had to go back to school in my late 30s to get my master's because when I graduated from art college way back when, it was a technical college, because of course back then it was skill-based learning, it wasn't academic. So going back to get my master's in my late 30s, I've never felt so stupid in my entire life. I was reading thick, dense papers, and wow. So yeah, I mean, it was a big deal, and I literally uprooted my entire life. And then you arrive in a new country and a pandemic hits, and
oh boy, yeah.
It's like, I was talking to my family, I'm like, I haven't had a hug in like a year and a half.
My goodness me.
I know, right?
Oh gosh, yeah.
But you know what? I did it. I did it,
Yeah.
and I found myself, and it was hard, but it was a really the best decision I've made.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. So the first resistance point, it's really us. And so we're stuck in ourselves, and we fear launching something new. And I had the same feeling when I started my business. Family was resisting, and everyone was saying, you're mad, you have a great job, you're well paid, people love you there. Why would you put everything at risk? And then you actually do it because you want to do, that's what you want to do in your life, and you want to feel happy. Sometimes you need to take some risks. And taking risks, Arne, would you like to roll the dice again and see what happens now?
No.
Once more, one more roll of the dice.
Okay, 3. Oh God, thank you. Well, actually, this is actually now. So I'm noticing that my camera work doesn't really, because I was planning to have like 2 separate cameras where I would have like one unhappy and one happy story thing. Yeah. But now, like, okay, yeah. So technology is still. All right. So the Design Thinkers group and sort of the whole story around that. I'm not going to share everything because it's way too long. For 15 years ago, but it is kind of related to I mean, all these stories are related, obviously, but this is kind of related to something which is me. If things become very stable, I get into trouble. If things become very stable, I get worried, and I get uneasy, and I want to move, and that is something that is part of me, and it's a difficult part. I find it very difficult to deal with because I lose others who are kind of comfortable in stable situations, and I get into these conflicts, and now I kind of know that, so I can warn people, and like the people around me know, like, okay, but it is about I'm always leaving. So Design Thinkers group started with this feeling that something was changing, and I needed to do something exciting, but I didn't want it to be traditional. I didn't want to get stuck into something. So 15 years ago, I started this network. And the silly thing is that people said, well, okay, network organization. First of all, at that time, you couldn't really do that because it makes no business sense. But we've did something else. I said, okay, I'm going to start, and this is at the start of Twitter and Facebook and, the whole social media thing. So we could connect to everyone around the planet really quickly. It was amazing. And nowadays you can't imagine that it wasn't there, but at that time it was so new. I just kind of connect to someone on the other side of the planet instantly, and have a conversation with them about service design thinking, whatever was the buzzword at the time. And so we were asked by people, can we join this Design Thinkers group? And we said, well, yeah, sure. And this is where I said, okay, but I don't want to have any contracts, no financial and no legal, no nothing like that. It has to be an experiment. We have to live. And people said, you can't do that. You have to have contracts, because you can't trust people to deliver the quality, so you can't do the whole company was big. You cannot do that. And we did, and we based our company on trust, and it has been an amazing journey, it has worked, and it also has failed, and it did everything and more. But it was such an amazing thing, and it's still alive, and it's still a family. We build it on trust. We didn't build it on contracts, which I always said that's like a contract is basically materialized distrust, is where you say, well, we're going to work together. I don't really trust you. I'm going to write down what I want from you, and I'm going to check every now. Before you know it, you have lawyers employed and all that stuff. We wanted to be free. We wanted to be, I really wanted to be free. So the problem here is that a process and a structure is going to be built around this, because there's always this balance. And like I said, at one point, there's a structure, and there's a process, and there's order, and then I get really nervous, and I get agitated, and I want to get out, which is my biggest problem. So I'm going to start new things again. Anyway, so that's my story around design thinkers, which is saying, like, I don't want to follow those rules. I don't want to be like that. And there's a little bit of a secret I don't think I've ever told anyone. But so and it's one of the other posts. I actually really wanted to be an artist. And to me, basically, the way I created Design Thinkers was, in my mind, and it sounds like very lofty, and I don't mean it that way. I'm totally not arrogant. I don't think of myself as an artist, but to me, it's been an art project. That's what it was. It was an experiment. It was trying things out, and it was seeing, the whole thing might explode, but it's sketching, and that's sort of the story around Design Thinkers. All right.
Okay, so let me launch one extra poll, and I promise I will not. So how do, hang on, yes, okay. Launching a poll, here we go. And so I hope you can see the poll up in your screen. And so it should be saying about how much—
You couldn't have planned this any better. Pedro.
How much chaos do you enjoy in your organization? And so let's see. Oh my goodness, we have a bunch of crazy people on board. They like experimental stuff all the way, or a fluid organization. Yes, and we can see a trend in the group. I can see a trend in the group. Let me see, end the poll in just a few seconds, and now publishing it. Share results. And if I'm not being chaotic myself, I believe you can see the results now, yes? Okay, great.
Yes.
So if we show this result in corporations, they'll go like, no, we cannot hire these people. They're total crazy bunch of idiots. Organizations really struggle, try to actually organize and create order. Otherwise, it's impossible to run a big organization without processes and without some stability. Of course, the instability brings rigidity, and then systems add to that rigidity and makes it much more difficult to change. And the bigger the organization, the more stability you actually need. The problem is you start to drive out all the space for innovation. And then how do you bring it back? And it becomes a strong fight between those who actually make the money at some point in the organization and keep things rolling, and the ones who are preparing the future, and the ones who are thinking what we would do further ahead. And so disruptive innovation gets killed because they don't have enough budget. And you can see that when you look at the budget of innovation departments versus marketing departments. When innovation is outside marketing, you can definitely see budgets that are in a proportion of 1 to 50, 1 to 20, 1 to 10 at best in large organizations. And this really shows how it is difficult to create a safe space for innovation and to have it running in larger companies. And so with this result in our poll, I would really ask again the audience who would like to say something about fighting in your own organization, about how difficult it is to innovate, and why is it difficult to innovate in your organization? Would like someone to step ahead and say, I'm struggling to create something new in my organization, and why? So, people, hello? Just speak up.
I'd like to just throw something out there as well, Pedro and Arne, is I'm not sure that it seems like this is positioning chaos versus order as binary, and it's definitely not, right? And I think it's actually healthy to have both working at the same time. You know, that actually is important in my mind. I just wanted to throw it out there because, you know, you can modulate between, you know, I'm chaotic now and now I'm going to go back to order, but it's just not like that. That's not the way it works. As soon as you get two squishy humans together or more, by definition, you're almost heading in a direction of chaos. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. It's not, I resist I resist the idea that it's either chaos or order. I think it's both at the same time. It's my thought.
And Union, I can see you like jumping to say something about this.
Yeah, I have the experience that some people say, "Oh, Union, you're so creative," and then the other colleague said, "Oh, you love order, don't you, woman?" So it was fun to me that, you know, within an hour people could say that, and I tried to explain it to myself that if the context is demanding for order, I could, you know, deliver that order. But if the context is asking for chaos, then something in my mind changed and I deliver chaos. Who else does this? Please share with me so I don't feel alone.
Can I say something to this? I could continue to this. I kind of recognize that you sometimes feel the slut that you are given. But my initial idea about this was that I'm not saying that I have like difficulties in being creative or chaotic in my organization, but sometimes it's easier to do that in another organization when you are not kind of part of the system within that organization. Sometimes people are more accepting to change from somebody outside than somebody who is already kind of within the same system.
And I was in that system, even more spooky.
Yeah, that makes me think of the, you know, many of us know this term of creating safe space, right? And it's kind of funny, you probably don't need safe space for order unless you're around people like Arne. But when you're in a depending on the organization, to your point, Johanna, you know, you have to invite people to be creative and to take more risk, you know, perceived risk, to be able to quote fail and all that kind of stuff. And that's a major issue that most organizations, Pedro, part of the blockers of innovation inside of organizations is the culture and the incentives that are in place, or the disincentives that are in place for people to take risk and to do things that are you know, perceived as risky or failure, right?
Let me get two voices from the audience. I see Ilona and also Patricia Lay, who are saying—
and also Hugo.
Okay, who would like to say something about, well, sometimes we need order to be creative. And that's also a good counterpoint, as after all, design thinking process is something we kind of enjoy. And so are we bringing order and processes into design thinking, and by that way, killing it or not? So Patricia Lay, my dear, would you like to say something about it?
Hello, I'm in Lisbon, by the way.
Oh, my dear, really? Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So I believe if we want to be creative, we also need this kind of order and safe space to do so. Otherwise, if everything is totally chaotic, we cannot feel safe to create something.
Yes. So let me share a quick story. So when I was the innovation director for this large company in Portugal, my CEO was telling me, I'm creating a tunnel for you. And so it's a protective tunnel. You can run through this tunnel for some time, protecting you from the organization. The organization will try to kill you. And so I need to cover you and give you some time to prepare things and innovate. And so that gave me also that safe space, that confidence that I had some time and some resources to be able to advance. So Patricia, I certainly see myself in what you're saying, absolutely. Ilona? And then Ugo.
Yes, hi.
Yeah.
I totally agree with what has been said, actually. You need the frame, you need to place a frame and to be the host as a coach, for instance, so that people feel safe and bear the chaos that is needed to become creative. But at the basis, there is a frame, there is something where we feel safe somehow and bear to go outside of the comfort zone from there.
Yeah, something that you can lay back into and say, okay, I have some safe ground. Yes. Ugo, you have your raised hand.
Yeah. In terms of innovation within the organizations, I think one of the challenges is how can you, inside of our organization, can have a foot outside of the organization and the other one inside the organization at the same time. So I think we as professionals or as independents or freelancers, it's more easier for us to be creative because, okay, we design things and create things based on the briefing on the problems of the organizations, and then we go to organizations to implement or to facilitate the implementation of it. But people who live in the organization, they don't have that kind of freedom. So the question is, how can a person belong to organization, but where part of the job is to be outside of the organization being free? And I think this is one of the great paradoxes that for the organization to be more, more constant or more built up and not being just projects or initiatives regarding moonshots.
Yeah. So did you ever feel you managed to kind of experience what you're talking about?
Yeah. As an individual, as a person who's a facilitator and who has customers and works with partnerships with guys and girls like you, for me it's kind of easier to be within the organization because I'm empathetic, so I feel the pains and gains of the companies, and my work is try to help or facilitate to create some solutions. But I also have the freedom and to protect myself of the stress of the environment and of all the harsh things that working within an organization implies. So I mean in the middle path of it. But people that have to implement innovation within a company, they sometimes don't get protected from this kind of environment, and they don't have time to do nothing, time to dolce fare niente.
Yeah.
If you ask, okay, part of your job description is to go outside 2 hours per week in front of the sea and just breathe. I can do that. It is my job description, and I know I will get in the ideas and insights. But if you go to some financial guy, okay, but the job description of this guy that earns, I don't know, 5K per month is to go outside to the company and just stroll in the park and run and having ideas by chaos.
Yeah. Vipke, I'd like you to prepare yourself to come on board. Let me just prepare the ground for you, which is, I had a long time ago a conversation with a guy who was working in Switzerland saying, I'm working with this large organization. They're incredibly rigid. They make helicopters. And what was happening was they're saying, we need the support from startups to launch new things, because a startup will do something in 6 months and we take 6 months to make a decision. And so startups can do something we cannot do. And they were trying to learn to say, how can we have half of our innovation based on startups around us, that we provide them some knowledge, we provide them some infrastructure, we can provide them perhaps even with some money. And then that actually became later on, this was kind of like 12 years ago, I fear. But then I saw a lot of perhaps accelerators and things like that, trying to match organizations, big organizations with startups to use them as the engines for innovation. Wibke, you wanted to say something about perhaps Berlin and how might this happen also in Germany?
Yes, what I find out is it's like if I have a look at the great corporates, they outsource their innovation hubs, and most of them are sitting in Berlin, or like the DB, which is the railway company, the National Railway Company. They have hubs in Berlin as well, but they have one in Münster, surprisingly, which is little. And they find out that the ecosystem within the corporate is not favorable for the startups. Mm-hmm. So they bring them or let them go where all the startup young hipster startup people want to go, which is Berlin. Well, in Germany it certainly is. And other cities try to establish hubs where they can gather and where they can come, but it obviously doesn't really work. Or like if you take telecom, they had an innovation process trying to establish startups within the organization, which didn't work either. It was like the same image of the tunnel. They tried to protect them and get them through, but their impression was that their startup within the corporate business was slowing down and adapting to the process within the corporate. Mm-hmm. So this is what happens a lot of the time. Or yeah, I see like we have a digital hub here, which was installed by the regional government, and they have digital startups, like 5 in North Rhine-Westphalia, and they try to do inverse pitches. So like the corporates can pitch their needs and the startups can try to match it, which is probably not unique to where I live. That's happening all over the world, or you have accelerators and stuff. But in Germany, it's certainly Berlin. Everybody's looking at Berlin, and and people in Berlin say it's boring. But it's like wherever you find a ground for creativity, or where you, yeah. This is only something that I found very interesting, that they obviously see the need to outsource their creative people. Yeah. And we had like, I'm doing TEDx as well, which I've repeatedly mentioned, I say. And we had the SAP creative, innovative lead on stage, and he said, "Design the future you want to live in." That was his TEDx talk, which you can certainly find. And he said the same, and he's traveling the world. He's never ever where SAP lives. He is in Berlin, or he's in Poland, or he's in Lisbon, but he's certainly not in that little village where SAP lives.
All right. So following up on this, and before I hand over to Arne again, I'd like to ask Arne, coming from a big organization who actually had a huge role in all the design thinking process. After all, even the design thinking school at Stanford actually has its roots inside Arno's organization, actually. So Arne, how is innovation with you guys, and the Clay Street thing and all of that? So what happened there? Trying to create some chaos within the order that was the organization.
Yeah, I mean, in big organizations, you have your like, and I'm talking here about Procter & Gamble. You talk about the politics together with the strive for avoiding risk avoidance. Mm-hmm. So what happened at one time in Procter & Gamble was that design thinking, there was a very important stream, and there's also an important stream that was called Clay Street, which is basically a whole organization and structure in place to bring teams together and basically rapid prototype and also basically also apply design thinking principles. But they clashed according to one person. Some persons who was leading design thinking went on maternity leave, and then politics came in and basically it pulled out the plug for that maternity leave period out of design thinking and focused all the effort on Clay Street. So that's one of the things you see. And what I see is in big organizations is that there's little pockets which reinvent themselves continuously. So if I look at the design thinking curve, it goes like this, but it's like if you look at the double diamonds, they're happening everywhere all the time, everywhere. It's really a beautiful picture if you see it all together, but like seeing what's happening where and when is really hard. So people are scared to step out of their little box and tell, hey, I'm doing this, because they're afraid that then corporate comes in and says like, no, we're doing this, you're not allowed to do that. So a lot of the innovators, what they do is like, I keep it small, I don't stick my head out too much and do what I want to. And then there's people trying to bring that all together. So we have this big organization. So I work in global business services, which is more focused on development of services inside P&G to the employees. And we have this big organization called New Generation Services, and they've gone to multiple cycles, and they were really quiet, and they were not trying to stick their head out. And now they're sticking their head out since the last 6 to 12 months. And what they're trying to bring is like, we are the experts, and we provide structure for innovation, which is funny because it goes a bit against your original principles, which was like, we're not there, we work silently on the background, and that allows us to innovate. So it's this continuous contradiction of creating the environment while providing structure at the same time. So I see there's structured chaos. That's at the end what you want to create, but it's really, really hard, because as soon as people start to put in structure, people forget to stop and let it go, build in some uncertainty in the system. It needs to be defined all the way. So I'll stop there.
Oh, thank you very much, Arne. So we started with a story from Arne, a very personal story, and we moved into kind of like job changes from Arne's father. We saw how this is a very, very personal moment, and it's something that is really difficult to handle. And we've heard some stories from you guys, personal stories about change, about a difficult change to make. And we went all the way up until we ended up with Arne talking about the gigantic corporation, which is Procter & Gamble, and how they also struggle to make these changes. And of course, in the end, change is all about people. And coming back to people, dear Arne, I think we've been a bit repetitive by now. Let's break the mold again. Over to Arne.
So let me see if I can get rid of a little echo I'm having. Okay, so the thing is that it all comes down to individuals and all comes down to people and to you as an individual. And movement starts within yourself. And in order to start a movement within others, first you have to start a movement within yourself. So I'm going to do a little exercise, and I need you to have a pen and paper. It can be small, it can be just have a pen and paper with you. Yeah, it can be. Don't worry about it too much. You can, if you don't have it quickly, you'll need it. You can use it later. Okay, so I hope we talked about safe space, and I think I totally agree, and I agree with almost everything that's been said. Also about the balance between structure and chaos. But safe space is, I think, the key, and I hope we created a safe space here for you. And I think a safe space starts with, being your genuine self and being connected to yourself and being someone who understands, who you are. So, so I talked enough for you to have a piece of paper. So, because now I want you to close your eyes. So again, feel safe. You are at home, probably. Maybe you're in the studio somewhere. Obviously, you can close your eyes. You can close your eyes and just and imagine yourself being in a space that you love. It's a room, it's a space, it's perfect. Think about what that looks like. What is that space? So walk around in that space. So really concentrate and walk around and think about where, is there light coming from somewhere? Where does that light come from? And what does it smell like? Is there smell? And the sounds, do you hear sounds? So try to concentrate on these elements for a little bit. Just walk around for a bit. Look up, look behind you. What does it sound like? Are there smells? Where's the light coming from? Is there stuff in there? Is it, what is it? Okay. So now, if you turn around, there's actually a wall, and there's a door. It's a little bit in the corner, a door. Go to that door. Just walk to the door and open it. And you'll see a little, it's like a closet. It's like a small space. And on the floor, there's all kinds of piece of paper, but there's also like gold dust. So there's shiny things. It's all kinds of things. It's so clear that away. So bend over or kneel down. Clear that away. And there's a box. You'll find a box, and inside of the box there's something that has been waiting for you. It's been waiting there for a very, very long time for you to to kind of spend some time with it, to give it some attention. So take the box into the room, put it on the floor, or maybe there's furniture. I don't know what your room looks like, but put it somewhere in the room and slowly open the box and look what's inside of the box. What is it? Take it out. Can you take it out? Just look at it. And maybe maybe you can't take it out, but just take a look at it. What is it? What's in that box? It's been waiting for you for a very long time. Okay. Okay, now slowly open your eyes again. And basically do two things. If you can, make a drawing or describe what's in the box that you found, and the room. What was the room like? Try to capture that in either drawing or writing, whatever is comfortable to you. Okay, go ahead. Give you a minute for that. Now, this exercise, and you don't have to share, nobody has to share this because it might be really personal what you found in the box. Maybe you want to share the room, what room you were in, because sometimes it's a surprise. I know I kind of manipulated it a little bit, because when I said there's a wall and there's a door, you might say there was no wall, there was no door. Or sometimes I say things like there's light, and you're like, what? Oh no, there was no, or I was outside. What do you mean? But you probably got a vision of a space that you liked and that you were in. The exercise is it's supposed to be very personal, because it is about something that we all carry with us. We all have little things that we kind of should kind of focus on, and it's in my mind. But again, it's very personal. It is very much connected to. You can't do it. I carry things with me, and I'm very happy I didn't have to share those stories, and the dice were in my favor. But I carry things with me that I should address, and I tell myself there's a voice in my head saying you should, and then there's something else in me and said, nah, I can't do that. Not now, not yet. I have to wait, or et cetera, et cetera. So there's these things. So who would like to share either what you found in the box or just the space? What was the space that you saw in your mind? Anyone?
Yeah, me.
Thank you,
Emil. I was actually I was in space, but it was I was submerged. I was diving, so I took it a lot further. There was this immense blue surroundings, except for one side, and there was this wall. It was made out of rock, and fortunately there was a door in the wall, and there was this little cabinet. And as I opened the door, all the pieces of paper were washed away by the seawater.
Awesome.
And I found this closet at the bottom, a small box, and I opened it. I had a real hard time to think what I was coping with for a long time, which something that needed attention. And I did my best. It was painstaking, and I don't know why, but suddenly the word peace came up. And I think it's about tranquility or peace or something. So that's my story.
Wow, that's beautiful. I like the fact that you're kind of because you were in the water, the papers you had to wash away. Your imagination, isn't that a wonderful thing? It's like, yeah, but I'm in the water, so the paper needs to kind of wash away. It's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Welcome.
Someone else like to share?
Yes. Hi, I was on a beach, and the light came from the sun, and behind me was this wall with the changing rooms. I opened the door and I found this box. I went back on the beach and opened the box and found a piece of paper, and there is something written on this paper. It was trust yourself and continue. This is, and it gave me a good feeling, actually.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Also ocean and beach here. So.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Last one to share. We can, by the way, at the top of the hour we go into backstage, so we can spend and we always hang around for 30 more minutes to kind of catch up and stuff. So we will have more time to talk if you want, for people who want to stay. But so who would like to share a last story?
I can share mine. And so it was a lake. It was with a huge lake with the trees around. There was a pathway that took me to the lake and to the trees, and it was an amazing space. And suddenly I heard Arne speaking about a box and said, "Box? What's the box? Where is the box?" Because suddenly I just, I think I was submerged on that lake, on those trees. And suddenly I realized, a box, I need to find something in the box. What's in the box? And so it was quite interesting. And inside the box, there is, I need to find something. And so what came to my mind suddenly, it was freedom. And so it was a mix of feelings because I was just submerged on that lake, on all those trees. And I remember that this place, I know this place because once I had been in a place in an amazing lake. And so I think I just go back to that place.
Yeah.
And now what I felt like this, I need to go to YouTube to see exactly what Arne says to find the box, because where was the box, you know? Because I don't know where I was for seconds, I don't know where I was. So thank you very much for the experience. It was amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome. Intuitively, our brains and our bodies, they can take us to places that are important to us. So either it's sometimes people really relate to what they found in that box because it means something to them, and often it's the space. And I think that it tells you something. It tells you something, and it is important to either address that or do something with that. Anyway, it was just a very quick exercise, but still, I found it often very powerful. So we are at the top of the hour. And I'm kind of I'm very pleased with, I think, the safe space that we were able to create for people to share things, and for myself also. And it starts with sharing things that might be difficult or personal or real or vulnerable, because the people who are the strongest people are also the most vulnerable ones, in my opinion. And I think that's not a paradox. Like chaos and order, it's not a paradox. It's both. So I think that's my biggest takeaway for now. And I want to thank all of you for joining this not very chaotic session, because Pedro somehow surprised me with putting order to what I thought was going to be totally messy, which is like, how did you, like, I don't know what you, as if we didn't prepare that at all, but it's actually pretty good. Well done, Pedro.
So for our dear audience, you won't believe, but actually none of this was prepared besides those 12 post-it notes from Arne. Everything else was total improvisation, and we didn't really know what direction to take. And so we didn't synchronize, we didn't prepare, we didn't try to take this into some direction. We were fighting these directions. We're trying to say we are not choosing a direction. To a level, as Arne was explaining, we don't even want to write a description of what the event might be, because that is establishing a direction. And suddenly this happens in a surprisingly organized way. I don't know how that happened.
So before we go to backstage, quickly back to order. We have to announce the next week's. So Steve, you wanted to, or Union, are you?
Yeah, no, thanks.
Steve? Yeah.
Yep, thanks, Arne. And thank you, Pedro. That was great. I really enjoyed it. Next week, we have two people, both professors at universities in the US, who use design thinking to teach their classes. Not necessarily teaching design thinking as a skill or a trade, but using human-centered design to adapt their coursework to an online environment. Karen Harp from Colgate University and Peter Scheyart, who's at Texas State University, have worked together for a long time and have used design thinking in their interactions with students and in their curriculum. And they're going to talk to us about how they've used human-centered design principles to adapt to the new school environment. So I hope you guys will join us. There probably will be some interactivity and challenges that they'll give us, but it should be really interesting.
All right, thanks. And we are in backstage. Thank you. So if people need to leave, thank you very much for joining us. I hope to see you next week. Yeah, and there we are.
Before people leave, I want to say thanks to one of our friends who is in the community, Fieke, and she always makes drawings for us, like this one. So, oops.
That's so cool.
Thank you, Fieke.
That's awesome.
You're so welcome. All the Wednesday web jams every time, and I really like to make drawings. I would do it anyway, but well, thank you for thanking me. It feels a bit stupid.
And yes.
Okay,
right.
okay.
Yeah.
I can promise you some more.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so
so goodness, it's over. Woo, we've survived this. Arne,
yeah, so I'm very happy with the dice. Very happy with the dice. Because I did actually.
amazing, because I really think it might be difficult for everyone else besides the two of us to actually believe, these guys prepared this shit. We didn't. We really didn't prepare anything.
I prepared.
I can
many
do
things.
that.
You can do that.
I can do that.
Please
for next
have
time?
a session, Emil. Have a session. I will be your handler.
Handler, you be like Pedro, like a process manager or something. No, I want to just look at together with you. I want to look at the session we just had.
Yes, of course. This is the backstage.
And well, I think I can reduce it a little bit because thanks to you, Pedro, it wasn't chaotic. But
well,
also,
I did a terrible job, though.
Sorry, no, you did not a good. You didn't do a good job. I'm sorry. You were too structured. But I guess there's one thing. We all need an interface, and I just thought to myself, how do I do that? How do I create an interface? And Arne helped me out now because he put me into a world, and I tried to explain the world to you, and you all were listening. Thank God. I wasn't the only one having this world of my own in my thoughts. So I could share it with you guys, and that is super. But that is what it's all about. I just had this epiphany last Monday that I said the words to somebody, and he said, wow. I had like the word from, I want the people to be part of my world. So yes. I try to influence them to come into my world. And that's where you need an interface. You need to give your world structured. So although it's maybe not structured, like submerged in the water with a closet in the wall of rocks, but I want to come the people into my world, and that's what an artist maybe also does. He is creative. He puts on a frame or a piece of paper, and he makes a painting like Wiebke does, and they give their world to another one. That is the interface. And that is what people can understand, except when it's Kandinsky maybe, or something more abstract. But they want to share a world. I want to share a world. And I think one of the most beautiful things I heard in this meeting was the last word before 6 o'clock and my time. And that was vulnerability. I think vulnerable is the most beautiful word in the English language that, well, it says about all. It is round, it is vulnerable, it is maybe a little bit feminine, but feminines are of course not vulnerable. The men are vulnerable, but vulnerable is a beautiful word. And if you can be vulnerable, then you invite people, you provoke people to let them show their feelings. You provide like a safety, like a safe. And you did it. You guys did it today. Arne, with his vulnerability, he created the safe world, and that is how I like to operate. I tell people things in trust, and I trust them until they give me a reason not to trust them. But that has never happened. So, and they give things to me. So that is my conclusion. Maybe a little bit long. I'm sorry.
No, that's a very good one. Again, actually going back to the story of the helicopter companies.
That's great.
What was happening there was that when it was working was when there was exactly that translator kind of trying to make the bridge or the interface between the big organization and the startup. And the role of the translator was truly essential, trying to build that bridge. Otherwise, nothing would work, and those very different organizations could not really communicate. And so those translators were absolutely essential. And so certainly your words made me come back to those days, yes.
Yeah, and the vulnerability part to me is part of, I think the first time I experienced that, the power of it was when I did comedy theater, or what they call in the Netherlands, cabaret. and long time ago, before Facebook and YouTube. But I learned that it was actually one of my stories where it's actually about the difficulty I had with that. But it's actually once you open up and you are vulnerable, even though it's still theater, but if you are really truly genuine, somehow it comes from a real feeling. Whatever even if it's a fantasy, or even if the story isn't 100% real, but if it connects to a real feeling, if you're really willing to be vulnerable, you then connect to people, and then it becomes funny to them, or powerful to them, or sad to them. And otherwise, it just doesn't. It just can't. It doesn't connect to them. It's almost a magical thing that because you think you are the only one feeling that. You think it's just you. And I think that's the other thing that I've learned as a facilitator later, is that when you facilitate groups of people, especially when you want them to be creative, or any group really, is that if you feel something, it guarantees everyone is feeling that. And if you have the courage to speak up and say, hey, there's something going on, or there's tension in the room, or there's low energy, you get all these little antennas, and which you can train, and that being both vulnerable, because you feel like, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just being stupid, or it's me, or it's my fault. First, when I wasn't experienced, just don't like me, or it's my fault, I'm doing something wrong. And then you learn, like, oh, wait a minute, no, it's something everybody kind of feels, and then you share it, make yourself vulnerable in that sense, but that makes you very strong too, because you're the only one who actually is courageous enough to share it. That's the fascinating paradox of it, that once you discover that if you are being vulnerable, you're the strongest person in the room. It's like, so it's an interesting reflection, I think, and it's something that we all go through. And I think that so the paradox of vulnerability and strength. There's no, it's like being courageous. If you're not afraid, you're not courageous. You're courageous when you do something you're afraid of. That's courage. If you don't care, it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't bother you. If you don't care and you do it, you're not courageous. So it's actually it's the tension that drives you, that gives you energy and innovation, and coming up with new things and creativity and art. Basically, in my experience, trying to be an artist on the side, it's actually a painful thing. It's always pain, but you need the pain, because without the pain, there's no growth. Without the pain, you can't learn. You're not growing. You'll never, like someone said to me one day, a couple of days ago, you can't run a marathon without, training and hurting. It's gonna hurt, right? There's no other way. So that's interesting. And if you don't want to be hurt, you're gonna have to, you're hiding away, and that's for your feelings. It's for everything. You kind of lock yourself into this bubble, and with your own reality and your own kind of truths. And I think in this world, I think it's really interesting to see whether we can kind of, have as a community break through our own little bubbles and be more vulnerable.
Let's hear from Anupa, who made some nice comments. And Anupa, not only want to hear from your comments, but we also want to hand over control to you. Let's say for the next 10 minutes, the show is yours, and just run the thing. So we lost control of things now. You're the host.
So are you trying to bring in kiosk through this?
Yes. How do you define or experience chaos? What are your ideas about it?
I thought I would experience chaos through, action, but I also realized that chaos can be experienced through conversation. So that's one of the things that I was asking everybody, like, do we have a preconceived notion about what chaos is? Because, chaos is normally, according to me, it's more driven by action, but it can be through thought, it can be through interaction, it could be through, just belief. So I would want to ask people, what do they think chaos is?
I'd like to say something just a slightly different angle. This idea of conversation between chaos and order. This image of a kite, flying a kite, and my daughter was given a kite a few years ago, and I think I enjoy it more than she does. And so, you know, if you guys have flown a kite before, you know, the sensation of being able to, the wind pulling the kite and you holding it, it's held on by the strings. There's this form, but there's a freedom within that and around that. And you kind of learn to navigate your way around the form. It's holding the kite in place. And my Russian teacher would always talk about, you'd have a piece of paper and you'd hold it and shake it. And said it's held in place by a form, but there's a freedom and there's a certain dance that happens around that form. And in this context of storytelling, I think, so Pedro, in the beginning, when you were talking about, you were saying there's no structure to this, that's a marker already. And almost in a story has a beginning, a middle, and end, and you set markers along the way. We're going to go from A to B to C, we'll end at a certain time. What happens in between those markers is a freedom. So this idea of that freedom and creativity happens around structures, not on the outside of structures, not within the structure, within the form. And you know, whether that's kind of accurate or not, it's just I like to think of it that way, that the freedom happens by setting certain markers and they reinforce each other. If there's too much freedom, it just flies, the kite flies off and then it crashes and burns. And if there's too much form, there's no magic, there's no joy that happens. So freedom from form.
That's really nice. Thank you. I know, but it's your ball.
Yeah, so I think like, why don't we hear some more thoughts on, or actually I'd like to ask both of you, when you were trying to create chaos, what were you both thinking about what chaos is? What was the experience of chaos that you were trying to bring about in this session? Was it just through the conversation? And how did you think that you would just merge with each other's thoughts to bring about this chaos?
Well, I think that sort of what sort of in my mind would happen is that the chaos was before the session. So the chaos was before, the chaos was saying no plan, trying to push that away as long as possible. No plan every time. But because it helped come up with all kinds of concepts. I have other concepts. I really literally thought of a really nice exercise to work on create safe spaces. And and all kinds of other sessions in my mind, and I thought, no, don't do it. But so your brain is this wonderful machine that's trying to save you all the time. So it's trying to help you. Like, no, you should have a plan. And the letting go of it again. I'm letting it go again. I'm letting it go. But it's like, it's like improv. In a way. This idea of, there is you go in on stage, for instance, and there's improv. Maybe someone gave you a role to play and a situation to play, and you go, okay, go ahead. Now you're there, and then you take that and you go play. But it's not. So chaos is not like everything's falling apart. Chaos is not like. I mean, that's also chaos, but that's chaos taken too far, and then it just dies. Yeah. So chaos being sort of this balance between what it's this thing called this edge of chaos, right? Edge of chaos meaning that on the edge of chaos it's about evolution, really. Edge of chaos is where we are the most creative. So try to get as much chaos as possible before it falls apart. And then you build structure again, and not too much structure, because if you build too much structure, it will die because it becomes all disconnected, and the ecosystem will die. And you have to create a little bit more chaos, not too much, because it will fall apart and the ecosystem will die. So that's sort of how chaos and order works, and it's in its constant movement. So constantly not saying, all right, I'll settle for this one. No, don't settle for it. Go. Let it go. Let it go. But it's not about the session itself, was actually where it became more structure. And then your brain starts to kick in and say, oh, we have to do this and do that. But to postpone as much as in design thinking, or in innovation, we call that the fuzzy front end. We call that, or the first part of the diamond, something silly like that. But it's basically, it's postponing this kind of, this structure to set in. And I think that's to me, that's what the beauty of chaos is where you let yourself go to the edge and maybe even a little bit over the edge, just before you fall off, you're like, oh,
yeah,
go back.
Let me share something which was about we kind of revolted around some of the structure that we felt within the WWJ, the web chats, of how we were working. But we need that structure anyway. That's really important. But in this sequence of how things happen, what would I do different? I think, like a musician, you're trying to jam with the other artist, but I didn't know exactly. So what could I get from Arne? So I had no idea, besides just the photograph of those 12 post-it notes. I had no idea of kind of like, how can I interact? Like, is this a good moment to pick up on?
And it only had numbers. I didn't
Yeah.
share the story. It only had numbers, so I didn't tell you. Yeah. You just had a photo of. You just had a picture of post-its with numbers. That's all.
Exactly. So what I felt during the session was kind of like, how can I jam? How can I actually interchange more frequently to understand how is this a good moment to pick up on Arne, on that space that I know he has something that we can build upon now. And so I couldn't pass the ball easily to him. And I was like, and then there was a moment in time when I sent him a message like, oh, can we do this? And I didn't get an answer for some time. I was like, okay, do something extra. And so it was a bit kind of like, how do you jam when you don't really know what's on the other side as notes, or as kind of like just this snippets of music that you can build upon? That was funny. So I think if doing it again, I think it would be fun to actually kind of just brainstorm a bunch of options, but making no decision to whatever options might be used. And that would be really interesting to do. For me.
Yeah, so maybe this could be like a technique also that, maybe teams could use among brainstorming with, let's say organizational, let's say dispute or some kind of, or, like how to understand people within a team, because, you really don't know what the other person is thinking, but you're trying to get to, understand like how a team works with, just being impromptu. I think Jimena is trying to tell us about something. So do you want to pop it up on the screen?
Thank you. But it's just like in a moment. Thank you, Anupa. No, I just, because Pedro, you were mentioning about, sorry, it's like something else connected.
No, the ball is yours. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, thank you. No, but you were sharing about just jamming together, but I pointed out that in the end, you both know each other for a while. So that's like a huge advantage that I would see compared to a situation in an organization where you perhaps barely know the other person sometimes, and still how to bring that jamming moment together. I believe like another question, and I wonder if that you mentioned like those 10 years of knowing each other in the end would have helped the bit within the session.
Oh yeah, of course. I trust Pedro completely, and I was trying to figure. I'm a bit sad that I didn't make the decision on doing something completely different, just to kind of mess with his mind. Because I had this idea. I thought this morning, like, wait a minute, I'm going to do something completely different. I'm going to really screw with his mind. And then I became like, maybe I wasn't courageous enough for that, but I knew he would be able to take that too. Because actually my wife said, you can't do that. That's not nice. I said, that's Pedro. He likes, that's fine. He can take it. So no, but so trust, right? So trust, knowing each other, and we've been jamming before. So yeah, of course, that's a huge difference. But just the last thing I'll say is it's about the music thing. Yeah. So hang on. So the music thing being that if you don't know each other, and but you speak the same language and you play the same notes, and and it's like I jam. So I play music, and I can jam with other musicians quite easily because we have a framework and there are these kind of notes, and so and so we are able to jam because we have the same language. So I think it's not just that, it's also about but it's more difficult or more scary to jam with people you don't know. But it's also maybe even more exciting if you discover, if you don't know each other, you discover all of a sudden, like, because if I jam, music wise with someone I've never met before, and you go on stage and you play music and it sounds really awesome, at least to your ears. Maybe the audience is leaving, I don't know, but at least for you, it's like, oh, this is really cool. That's maybe even a more amazing feeling. Then
Would you take that challenge to pick like somebody next time from the community and just like,
oh sure,
let's just,
of course, yeah, it'd be cool. I don't care.
We should ask the community, would you like to do something, join us in a jam which is completely experimental?
Yeah,
Yun, I can see Yun's face. She's like, like, no.
Yeah, I would love it. I would love it. I am the yin yang person. So in the form, there is no form. In the no form, there is the form.
And actually, and the structure of today came from the dices. Because the flow of the stories was the flow that the dices dictated.
Yeah, and the dice came like that was yesterday or something. I thought, oh yeah, wait, I have like, oh wait, I have 12. How do I choose? Do I let people choose? That's too difficult. Like, oh wait, there's 12 post-its. Oh, I can do that. So I looked for. I really had to look very hard because my kids kind of lost them somewhere. Like, where are the dice? It must be dice. That's really cool. But the key here was that, and I think that's important. It was important to me. I'm not sure if it was important for everyone, but to me it was that these were real stories, and there are really a couple of stories here that I'm very happy. In my head, I was sharing those stories, and I'm thinking, really? But they were really, very vulnerable. But because they were there, even though I didn't share them, I think it made a difference in the. So also choosing, saying, sort of making the difference between good stories and bad stories, saying, so there's a little bit like, I don't know what's going to happen. So it gamified it a little bit because, there was a winning and losing part, like, oh, damn it. There was a chance. And I think that chance thing was also nice. I like that. And I mean, interactive storytelling in that sense. I actually wanted to have everyone, but there was not enough time, everyone to write down sort of their, you can't do that, anecdotes, and then and we thought, oh, then we can actually do it. I can throw dice for people or something, like they number them, and I say, you have to share number 8 or something like that. But there wasn't enough time. But it can work in another session like that, right? So there's this moment of vulnerability that is almost not chosen, but like, okay, you brought it, so there, it's almost forced vulnerability. But it works. I think it works.
I do want to add something to your what you're saying, Arne, because we in this session we have learned about and exercised our vulnerability. I hope we all can see it as a challenge to still be able to get that vulnerability out of us again when we are in the other context, and keep each other sharp to help others by our vulnerability. It was a nice play here. Don't keep it for ourselves. Share it with others who don't know yet.
Anna, I love that the dice story game. Also because it kind of implies that saying union to carry on being vulnerable is, to be able to tell stories, we need stories to tell. So being able to harvest those stories that you hold within already, and kind of document them or index them and have them available to tell when there's an appropriate opportunity. Love that game. I might borrow it. Definitely will.
Oh, cool. Thank you. That's wonderful. Cool. That's great. So we are at the end of the backstage.
Indeed.
Yay. So
thank you.
I want to wish everyone a wonderful evening, night. I don't know where you're morning. Not sure where everyone is still. But thank you for joining this this session. It was interesting, and I don't know. I enjoyed. So the one thing that I liked about this process was that it made me very creative because it created still some tension, and that's something that is, I don't know, is so valuable. So thanks for being with us and allowing us to do so, and allowing us to again explore and experiment, and both in some technology and stuff that has been failing because some stuff is not working and I need it next week, so I'm worried now. Anyway, thanks for taking this journey with us. All right, so take care.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye bye all. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.
1, 2, 3.